Welcome. Settle into a comfortable position, whether you're lying down or sitting up. If it feels right, gently close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath in. Feel your chest rise as your lungs fill. Then softly exhale, letting go of any tension you've been holding. Before we continue, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know where you're from and what time you're watching it. Always great to connect with you. Now, take another deep breath in and exhale slowly, releasing any lingering stress. Feel your shoulders relax, your jaw loosen, and the tension in your forehead fade away. With each breath, notice your body growing heavier, sinking deeper into relaxation. Let your mind drift freely, like a leaf floating on a calm, steady stream, carried effortlessly. Simply listen to the sound of my voice and allow yourself to be gently guided. The town of Eldergrove was a place where spring arrived like a painter's dream, splashing colors across meadows and breathing life into every corner. Tulips burst open in crimson and gold, cherry blossoms drifted like soft snow, and the air carried a sweetness that made even the weariest soul pause. But beneath this vibrant renewal, something ancient stirred in Eldergrove each spring, something that had no name, only a presence, felt in the way shadows lingered too long under blooming trees. Clara Henshaw, a botanist in her early 30s, had moved to Eldergrove 3 months ago, drawn by rumors of rare flora in the surrounding woods. Her small cottage sat at the edge of town, where the forest began to thicken, its windows always catching the glow of dawn. She spent her days cataloging plants, sketching their delicate structures, and marveling at how the soil here seemed to hum with life. Yet, as April deepened, she noticed peculiarities. Flowers that opened only at midnight, their petals glowing faintly, roots that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking, and a faint, rhythmic pulse in the earth, like a heartbeat too slow to be human. This morning, Clara knelt in her garden, examining a cluster of strange lilies she hadn't planted. Their stems were glossy black, their petals a deep violet that shimmered like wet ink. She reached to touch one, and it recoiled, curling inward as if aware of her. A chill ran through her, not from the breeze, but from the sense that the flower was watching. She laughed nervously, brushing it off as fatigued she'd been up late, transcribing notes, but her unease lingered. "Clara!" a voice called, breaking her thoughts. It was Milo, the town's librarian and her closest friend since arriving. He was lanky, with glasses that always slid down his nose and a habit of carrying books everywhere. Today, he held a leather-bound tome, its cover cracked with age. "Found something you'll want to see," he said, breathless from his walk. "In the archives. It's weird." They sat on her porch, the book between them. Its pages were brittle, filled with handwritten accounts from Eldergrove's founding in 1792. Milo pointed to a passage titled The Spring Covenant. It described a ritual performed by the town's settlers, a pact with the bloom to ensure fertile harvests. The words were vague, but one line stood out. "The bloom wakes when the earth warms, and it hungers for what was promised." Clara frowned. "Sounds like folklore. A metaphor for nature's cycles, maybe?" Milo's eyes were serious. "Keep reading." The next page detailed disappearances always in spring, always near the woods. Names were listed. Abigail Thorne, 1,793. Samuel Witt, 1,821. Eliza Crane, 1,904. Each vanished without a trace, their homes found with doors ajar, petals scattered on the floor. The most recent was a girl named Lila Marsh, 1,995, age 17. A faded photo was tucked into the book, a teenager with bright eyes, standing by a tree bursting with blossoms. Clara's stomach tightened. "This is unsettling. But it's just stories, right?" Milo hesitated. "There's more. I cross-checked the town records. Every person listed, their families swore they heard whispering from the woods the night before they vanished. like voices, but not human. She wanted to dismiss it, but the memory of those lilies recoiling, alive, flashed in her mind. "Okay," she said, voice unsteady. "Let's say there's something to this. What's the bloom?" Milo shook his head. "The book doesn't say, but it mentions a place in the forest, a clearing where the settlers made their pact. I think it's still there." Against her better judgment, Clara agreed to find it. They set out that afternoon, the forest alive with spring's chorus. Birdsong, rustling leaves, the hum of insects. But as they ventured deeper, the sounds faded. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of sap and something sharper, like rust. Clara's pulse quickened, though she couldn't say why. After an hour, they found Ida clearing ringed by towering oaks, their branches woven into a canopy that dimmed the sunlight. At its center stood a gnarled tree, its trunk unnaturally wide, its bark etched with faint, spiraling patterns that looked almost like writing. The ground was carpeted with those same black lilies, their petals trembling despite the still air. "This is it," Milo whispered, clutching the book. Clara stepped forward, her boots sinking slightly into the soil. It felt warm, too warm, and that faint pulse she'd sensed in her garden was stronger here, thrumming up through her soles. She knelt by the tree, brushing her fingers against its bark. It was smooth, almost slick, and for a moment, she swore it shifted under her touch. "Milo, do you?" Her words cut off as a sound rose from the earth, a low, guttural hum, like a chorus of voices too deep to understand. The lilies snapped, shut in unison, their stems quivering. Clara stumbled back, heart pounding. "We need to go," Milo said, his voice tight. But before they could move, the ground shuddered. Roots broke through the soil, coiling like snakes, their tips glistening with a viscous sap. They didn't strike, didn't attack, they simply reached, curling toward Clara and Milo with a slow, deliberate grace. She grabbed his arm, pulling him back, but the roots were everywhere, blocking their path. "Clara!" Milo shouted, pointing. The tree was changing. Its bark split open, revealing a hollow within, pulsing with a faint greenish light. From inside came a sound, not a hum now, but a whisper, layered and endless, like 1,000 voices speaking at once. Clara couldn't make out words, but the tone was clear. It was calling her. She froze, transfixed, her mind clouding. The whispers grew louder, promising secrets, knowledge, life beyond imagining. Her hand reached out, unbidden, toward the hollow. Milo's voice was distant, yelling her name, but it felt like a dream. Then pain-sharp, grounding. Milo had grabbed her, his nails digging into her wrist. "Don't listen!" he screamed, dragging her away. The roots surged, but they were slow, almost reluctant, and the two stumbled out of the clearing, branches snapping at their heels. They didn't stop running until they reached Clara's cottage, collapsing on the porch, gasping. The forest was silent again, but Clara's skin crawled with the memory of those whispers. She looked at her hand, half expecting to see it changed, but it was just her hand, trembling. "What was that?" she whispered. Milo opened the book, his hands shaking. "I don't know, but look." He pointed to a final passage, one they'd missed. "The bloom does not take without offering. It gives life to the earth, but it asks for life in return. Those who hear its call must answer, or it will come for them." Clara's eyes darted to the woods. The sun was setting, painting the trees in shades of fire, but something moved in the shadows, a flicker, like petals drifting against the wind. That night, she couldn't sleep. The cottage felt too small, the walls too thin. She kept her lights on, her notes untouched, the strange lilies outside her window now open again, their violet glow brighter than before. Around midnight, she heard it, a whisper, soft and insistent, coming not from the woods but from her garden. She didn't go outside. She didn't dare. But as she sat there, clutching a knife she didn't know how to use, Clara knew one thing with chilling certainty. The bloom was awake, and it had seen her. Clara woke with a start, her heart racing before she even opened her eyes. The knife she'd clutched all night was still in her hand, its blade glinting in the pale morning light. Her cottage was silent, but the air felt wrong too thick, like it was holding its breath. She glanced at the window. The black lilies outside were still, their violet petals closed as if sleeping. But she knew better now. They weren't just plants. Nothing in Eldergrove was just anything anymore. She hadn't slept much, the whispers from the garden echoing in her mind. They hadn't been words, not exactly, but they carried a pull, a promise of something vast and terrible. She'd resisted, stayed inside, but the memory of the clearing the tree, the roots, the hollow pulsing with light clung to her like damp earth. Milo arrived early, his face pale, shadows under his eyes. He carried the same old book, its pages now marked with scraps of paper. "I couldn't sleep either," he said, setting it on her kitchen table. Kept thinking about it. The bloom. Clara poured coffee, her hands unsteady. "Did you hear anything last night? From outside?" He shook his head, but his eyes flicked to the window. Number. "But I dreamed about the clearing. The tree, it was talking, Clara. Not with words, but I understood it. It wanted something from me." She shivered, her own dreams, a blur of twisting roots and glowing petals. "We need answers, Milo. That book, does it say anything about stopping it, or what it wants?" He opened to a page he'd marked, his finger tracing faded ink. "Not much. Just more about the covenant. The settlers gave it something every spring, a tribute to keep it dormant. It doesn't say what, but I think it was people." Clara's stomach churned. The list of names Abigail, Samuel, Lila flashed in her mind. Sacrifices? Maybe. Or something else. The book keeps mentioning life like it's a trade. The bloom gives the town prosperity, fertile soil, endless springs. In return, it takes something. She stood, pacing. "We need to know more. The clearing's too dangerous, but there must be other records, people who know something. This town's been hiding it for centuries." Milo nodded. "There's Old Man Carver. He's lived here forever. Used to be the town historian before I took over. If anyone knows a bloom, it's him." They found Carver at his farm on the outskirts of Eldergrove, a sprawling place where wildflowers grew in chaotic bursts. He was in his 80s, wiry and weathered, tending a patch of roses that looked too perfect, their thorns glinting like polished bone. He squinted at them as they approached, his hands pausing mid-prune. "What's this about?" he grunted, wiping sap from his shears. Clara hesitated, but Milo spoke first. "We found something in the archives. About the bloom, the spring covenant." Carver's face didn't change, but his grip on the shears tightened. "Old stories, best left buried." "We've seen it," Clara said, her voice firm. "In the woods, the tree, the roots. It's real, and it's awake." For a long moment, Carver said nothing, his eyes searching hers. Then he sighed, setting the shears down. "Come inside." His kitchen smelled of earth and herbs, bundles of dried plants hanging from the ceiling. He poured tizomething dark and bitter and sat across from them. "You're fools, poking at things you don't understand. But you felt it now. Won't leave you alone." "What is it?" Clara asked, leaning forward. Carver's voice was low, deliberate. "The bloom ain't a thing you name. It's older than this town, older than the trees. It's the life in the soil, the pulse in the roots. Long ago, folks here learned it could give as much as it took. Made a deal, keep it fed, and the land stays alive. Stop feeding it, and it finds its own meal." "Fed how?" Milo pressed. Carver's eyes darkened. "Blood, will, soul. Don't matter what you call it. Every spring, someone answered its call. Went to the tree, gave themselves, kept it quiet. But people got soft, forgot the old ways. Last one was Lila Marsh, 30 years back. Since then, we've been dodging it, hoping it'd sleep." Clara's throat tightened. "Lila, she didn't just vanish? She chose," Carver said flatly. "Her family knew. Most do, when the time comes. You hear the bloom, you feel it pulling. Hard to say no." Milo gripped the book. "Why didn't anyone warn us? The town." "Town scared," Carver snapped. Always has been. You think people want to admit they live on cursed ground? Easier to pretend it's just stories. Clara's mind raced. If it's awake now, what happens? Will it take someone? Carver looked at her, his gaze heavy. It already has its eyes on you, girl. You felt it, didn't you? In the clearing. It knows your name now. Her blood ran cold. She wanted to argue, to say he was wrong. But the memory of the whisper-sure hand reaching for the hollow stopped her. Only way to quiet it, Carver continued, is to give it what it wants, or find its heart and cut it out. But that ain't been done, not in my lifetime. Where's its heart? Milo asked. Carver shook his head. Deep in the woods, deeper than you've gone, past the clearing where the trees don't look right. But you go there, you're as good as gone. They left Carver's farm in silence, the weight of his words pressing down. The sun was high, but the forest's edge seemed darker, its colors too vivid, like a lure. Clara's garden came into view as they neared her cottage, and she froze. The black lilies had spread overnight, their stems weaving through her roses, their petals open and pulsing faintly, like tiny hearts. Milo, she whispered, pointing. He followed her gaze, his face paling. That's not normal. They're moving. They weren't swaying in the breeze. The stems were crawling, inching across the soil, their roots exposed and writhing like worms. Clara grabbed a shovel from her porch, her hands shaking, and hacked at the nearest cluster. The lilies shrieked a high, keening sound that wasn't possible for plants. Sap sprayed, thick and red, staining her hands. She stumbled back, the shovel clattering to the ground. We can't stay here, Milo said, his voice barely audible. Not tonight. But Clara's eyes were on the forest. Something flickered between the trisa shape, too tall, too thin, draped in blossoms that shimmered like eyes. It didn't move closer, but it didn't need to. She felt its gaze, heavy and hungry, pulling at her like a tide. They spent the night at Milo's apartment in town, barricading the door with furniture. The book lay open on his table, its pages a cruel reminder of how little they knew. Around 2 a.m., Clara woke to a sound, faint, rhythmic, scratching at the window. She stepped to the blinds, peering out. The street was empty, bathed in moonlight. But at the edge of the sidewalk, where grass met pavement, a single black lily stood, its petals glowing. It hadn't been there before. Milo, she whispered, her voice trembling. It's following us. He didn't answer. When she turned, he was staring at the book, his finger on a new passage he'd found. It was short, scrawled in a different hand. The bloom sees through the earth. It knows your fear. Run, and it follows. Fight, and it learns. Only the heart can end it, but the heart is not kind. Clara's breath caught. The scratching at the window grew louder, joined by a whisper her name, woven into the wind. Clara's breath fogged the window as the scratching intensified, a relentless clawing that matched the rhythm of her pulse. The single black lily outside Milo's apartment swayed, its glowing petals pulsing like a beacon. Her name lingered in the air, whispered by a voice that wasn't human low, layered and endless, as if the earth itself were speaking. She backed away, her hands trembling, and turned to Milo, who was still hunched over the ancient book, his face pale under the dim lamplight. We can't ignore it anymore, she said, her voice barely steady. It's here. It's everywhere. Milo's eyes flicked up, wide with fear but sharp with determination. This passage, he said, tapping the page. It says the heart can end it. We have to find it, Clara, tonight, before it comes for us. She wanted to argue, to flee Eldergrove and never look back. But the memory of the clearing the trees hollow, the roots reaching, the pull of those whispers told her running wouldn't help. The bloom had marked her, just as Carver said. It knew her fear, her doubts, her very breath. There was no outrunning something that lived in the soil beneath her feet. Okay, she said finally, swallowing hard. But we need a plan. Carver said it's deeper in the woods, past the clearing. If we go prepared. They raided Milo's apartment for anything useful. A flashlight, a crowbar, a kitchen knife, and a box of matches. Clara hesitated, then grabbed a small vial of herbicide from her bag, a leftover from her botany work. It felt futile against something so ancient, but it was better than nothing. Milo photocopied the book's key pages, tucking them into his jacket. "If we don't make it back," he said quietly, "someone needs to know what happened." The night was unnaturally warm as they stepped outside, the air thick with the scent of blossoms and decay. The lily on the sidewalk was gone, but its absence felt like a trap, as if it had sunk back into the earth to watch them. The forest loomed ahead, its trees silhouetted against a moon that seemed too bright, casting shadows that writhed like living things. They moved quickly, retracing their path to the clearing. The woods were silent, no birds, no insects, just the crunch of their boots and the faint pulse Clara felt through the ground, stronger now, like a drumbeat calling her deeper. When they reached the clearing, the gnarled tree stood unchanged. Its bark split to reveal the hollow within, still glowing faintly green. The black lilies carpeting the ground snapped shut as they approached, their stems trembling. "Don't look at it," Milo whispered, gripping her arm. "Keep moving." They skirted the tree, pushing past the oaks into uncharted forest. The trees here were different, taller, their branches twisted into shapes that looked almost deliberate, like fingers reaching for the sky. The air grew heavier, the pulse louder, vibrating in Clara's bones. She clutched the knife, its weight, a small anchor against the growing sense that they were being watched. After what felt like hours, the trees parted to reveal a new clearing, larger and darker than the first. At its center was no tree, but a massive tangle of roots, coiled and knotted into a shape that resembled a heart knot, the Valentine kind, but a real, pulsing organ. Its surface slick with sap and veined with glowing filaments. The black lilies grew thick here, their petals open and shimmering, their stems weaving through the roots like threads in a tapestry. The pulse was deafening now, a rhythm that drowned out Clara's thoughts. "This is it," Milo said, his voice barely audible. "The heart." But as they stepped closer, the ground shifted. Roots burst upward, not attacking but encircling, forming a cage around the heart. The lilies turned toward them, their petals flaring like eyes. And then the whispers, Kamino one voice, but thousands, weaving together in a chorus that spoke directly to Clara's mind. "You've come. You've seen. Now give." Her knees buckled, the knife slipping from her hand. Images flooded her elder grove's endless springs, fields bursting with life, faces of people long gone, smiling as they walked into the woods. The bloom showed her its gifts: fertility, renewal, a world that never faded. But it demanded a price. She saw Lila Marsh, young and radiant, stepping into the heart's embrace, her body dissolving into light. She saw others, countless others, their lives fueling the earth's pulse. "No," Clara gasped, clawing at the ground to stay upright. "I won't." Milo was shouting, swinging the crowbar at the roots, but they barely budged, their surfaces gleaming like iron. "Clara, fight it!" he yelled. "It's in your head!" She tried to focus, to block out the whispers, but they were relentless, promising peace, purpose, eternity. Her hand reached out, unbidden, toward the heart. Its surface pulsed faster, eager, then pain-sharp, grounding. Milo had grabbed her, his nails digging into her arm. "Stay with me!" he screamed, thrusting the matches into her hand. "Burn it!" Clara's vision cleared, the whispers retreating just enough for her to move. She struck a match, its flame small but fierce, and tossed it at the heart. The roots writhed, pulling back as the fire caught, licking at the sap-slick surface. The lilies shrieked, a sound that tore through the air, and the heart pulsed wildly, its glow flickering. But the bloom wasn't done. The ground heaved, roots lashing out, one catching Milo's leg and dragging him down. He screamed, clawing at the earth as the heart opened, revealing a hollow within, its light blinding. Clara lunged, slicing at the root with her knife, but it was too strong, pulling Milo closer. "Clara, go!" he shouted, his voice breaking. "Finish it!" Tears stung her eyes, but she knew he was right. She grabbed the herbicide vial, smashing it against the heart. The liquid hissed, eating into the roots, and the fire flared higher, consuming the filaments. The whispers turned to wails, a cacophony of rage and pain. Clara struck another match, then another, hurling them into the heart's hollow. The explosion was silent, but seismic. The ground buckled, the roots collapsing, the heart imploding into a mass of ash and sap. The lilies withered, their glow fading, and the pulse stopped, leaving an emptiness that echoed in Clara's chest. She crawled to Milo, who lay still, his leg bloodied but free. He was breathing, barely. "Did we?" he whispered. "It's gone," she said, though she wasn't sure. The forest was quiet, the air lighter, but something lingered, a faint tremor in the earth, a promise unfulfilled. They stumbled back to Eldergrove as dawn broke, the town waking to a spring that felt ordinary. The flowers were just flowers, the soil, just soil. Carver met them at Clara's cottage, his eyes narrowing at their wounds, their story. "You did what no one could," he said, voice gruff. "But the bloom's old, older than us. It don't die easy." Clara didn't reply. She burned her garden that day, every lily, every root, and moved her things to Milo's apartment. They didn't speak of the heart, but they watched the woods, waiting for a cyanopetal, a whisper, a pulse. Weeks passed, then months. Eldergrove thrived, its springs vibrant but tame. Clara and Milo rebuilt, their scars a reminder of what they'd faced. They thought they'd won, that the bloom was gone. But one night, as summer faded, Clara woke to a familiar scent sweet, sharp, like sap and rust. She crept to the window, her breath catching. A single black lily stood in the yard, its petals glowing faintly, trembling as if alive. And beneath her feet, the earth pulsed once, softly, like a heart stirring from sleep. And there we are reading stories, carried to you on the wings of the rain. The night is quiet now, the storm easing into a gentle murmur. I hope these tales have wrapped you in a strange sort of comfort, the kind that lingers between waking and dreaming. The rain will keep falling, soft and steady, long after my voice fades. Let it guide you to sleep, to a place where the shadows are just stories, and the unknown is nothing to fear. Good night, and sweet dreams.